Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz pianist Romain Collin on his newest 2019 CD, Tiny Lights. This new project, in his words, is a reflection of his personal and unaffected blueprint. They symbolize the ceaseless intuition that flickers deep within, pushing one to follow a true north, to pursue a vision that belongs to you and to you alone. They are the expression of a primal life force and drive that becomes all that one can become. Tiny Lights now lives inside everybody, and he explores that notion in this project.
So, Romain, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz to talk about this latest album. It's a great listen. I've already had it on the show. I'm excited to talk about it.
Fantastic.
So, Tiny Lights, in your descriptor, is kind of the essence of all of these aspects of us that come out either primally or cerebrally in all of these different ways. Talk to me about the artistic aim and what you mean by Tiny Lights.
Well, to me, it's essentially like a primal life force that is unique to each and every one of us, and that basically craves to be expressed if it's paid attention to. If that makes any sense. The idea is, I feel like, as artists, but also as human beings, life just looks more beautiful when you are all of yourself, and you express yourself with honesty and courage and self-love and love for others. And it's just that notion of just that primal life force that is in you and that wants to. It's like a blueprint. It's a personal blueprint that wants to be expressed and experienced throughout the journey of life, essentially.
You know, the sound of this album is quite different from your other albums. Talk to me about what evolved in your life. What happened for you to get to a new sound?
It is really different. Well, it's basically writing is just it's throughout the years. It's a process of integrating as much of all the sounds that have influenced me as possible. So it's not easy to do because we'll start on a scene, right? So maybe it's the contemporary jazz scene, the New York scene, or maybe you live in LA, in Europe, whatever. I think there are implied rules to this game when you're part of a scene, I think. And none of it is explicit, but it's also what it means to be influenced by your surroundings. And I devote my entire work as a composer to trying to be as honest as possible to all of the genres of music that influenced me, that have influenced me, not just those that are in my immediate surrounding and in a scene that I'm a part of, but everything since I was a kid listening to music. I used to listen to Michael Jackson when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, like obsessively. And then my, junior high school years would be something else, and then high school something different, so eventually leading to different types of music, growing up, growing a little older. But all of this is part of my artistic, emotional, musical fabric, and I think it's really important and extremely self-fulfilling to create an art form that is truly honest with everything that has touched you emotionally. So this is what I thrive to do on that record. It's a lot more rock and electronic than my previous albums, where my first records were essentially more acoustic and more rooted in the tradition of the jazz piano trio, if you will. And they were already pretty different from something that you would consider jazz traditionally. But at this point, the notion of any genre isn't even relevant to me anymore. I just want to create sounds that are as close as possible to what it is that I'm hearing in my head. And I figured a good way to do this would be to have guitar, because electric guitar is a really important instrument to me in terms of the texture, the colors that it can create. And I figured I still wanted to play with a three-piece band, there's something so intimate on stage when it's just three people, you know? If you make it a quartet, it's already a very different dynamic, but a trio is so peculiar energetically in terms of how each member relates to each other, you know? And the synergy and the chemistry can be really magical. So I try to think of a way to do this, and my very good friend and sound engineer Jeremy Lucas talked to me about the Moog Taurus, which is a bass synthesizer you can play with your feet. He said, "Man, you should really try this because the synth bass, the real fat, rich low end of the synth bass would completely, like, totally complement and fit the sound that you're making and what your music that you're writing for right now, and also you could play yourself. So that way, then you have guitar, drums, piano, and bass with a three-piece band. So that's kind of how it came together."
So the one thing about this is that it's presented through three moving parts. Talk to me about the construction and kind of the trilogy of this.
So I wrote most of the music, and I see a lot of images when I write music, and I hear a lot of music when I see images. It's just that, I guess that's just the way I'm wired. And I was going to do music videos for the record. We've already done one for Tiny Lights That Move and Speak. Matthew Palmer, who's a great director in LA, created this video, and we actually met maybe a year ago, because we're working on a project together. I was just scoring something that he had been working on, because I do some film scoring as well. And we had a great rapport, so I hit him up and I said, "Man, you know, I'm making this record. I would love for you to put images to this piece of music." He heard it, and he right off the bat started having ideas and just brainstorming a little bit. And I realized that because it's instrumental music, it is difficult for an outsider to really understand what's going on in terms of the narrative, you know, in my mind. So I wrote this text that's actually in the physical copy of the album. It's included in the artwork. And I wrote this text, which is, it just kind of, it was an outpouring that felt really organic and natural. I wrote it in just a couple of days. And it's sort of this tale about a boy that's on a journey to self-realization, but it's a lot of vivid imageries. It's not written very linearly, because that's not necessarily the way I see things. But it was enough for me to think, okay, cool. I'm gonna use this text and send it to Matt Palmer, the director, see if he makes anything out of it. And it really worked. He felt that the narrative was strong enough for him to totally have something to latch onto and create images to it, etc. So from there, I decided to release the album in three parts that would essentially be articulated around that text that I had written. That there were specific pieces on the album that supported parts of that story. And so I basically articulated that narrative in three parts and wanted to release it as such. Because I think storytelling is so important. I think there's something very limited in instrumental music, unfortunately, as far, you know, I love singer-songwriters, and there's a reason they touch the heart and soul so directly in a way. And I think it's the storytelling element of it. Everybody can relate to a story that he or she would sing, so I suppose I'm trying through instrumental work to embrace some of that aspect of storytelling.
That's great, man. Romain, you really opened up about this album. It's been refreshing to have it on the show. I'm looking forward to spinning it more. Thank you for talking about it. Thank you for what you're doing for jazz. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Roman for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.